guests. I'm so excited to be with Dr. Judi Brown Clarke. She's the Vice President for Equity and Inclusion, the Chief Health Equity Officer, Chief Diversity Officer at Stony Brook University and Health System. She serves on the President's Cabinet and senior leadership teams, leading efforts in inclusive excellence and equity sustainability. And she's also a former 1984 Olympic silver medalist and four-time national collegiate champion. I mean, wow, Judi. And in addition, over almost 2 decades, over 17 years of diversity strategy, grant leadership, institutional transformation. I mean, Judi, I could keep going on and on about all of your amazing accomplishments. Thank you so very much for being here.
Oh my goodness, Annalise, thank you for offering, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Judi, I always start with this question, and it's about identity. How has that shaped your life?
Yeah, so growing up, I'm an African American female. I'm 6 feet tall. Grew up very much a tomboy. And so you have to think I had a lot of things about my identity that made me have to kind of navigate the expectations of the world.
Mm.
And so I grew up with some very strong women, my mother, my grandmother, my the aunts, and I just had, teachers and things around me that gave me affirmation. And that affirmation, I believed them. So when the world was telling me I was something less than, I had this incredible strength of what they defined me as. And so it just really just kind of gave me the tenacity to, if you don't think I can do it, then that absolutely motivates me to do it.
Judi, did you see that you would be an Olympian? I mean, you were just like, I see that greatness. Maybe the world's not seeing it, but my mama sees it. I see it. Let's go. Like, was that was that the plan? I mean, it's incredible.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I grew up in a non-athletic family. We didn't watch sports. We didn't attend games. We didn't play youth sports. We were very physical. So we rode our bikes. We played a lot of kind of, your neighborhood games. Like we would play baseball. We'd do double dutch. We'd ride our bikes and things. So we were very, very active, but organized sports. No, I was raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and like our whole playground it was all concrete and it had 12-foot fences. And so there was no, so it was, literally all my play was on concrete. So it was a very different relationship and physical activity than say young people today.
So you had this force of love and affirmation.
Yes.
And you, even though you were hearing things from the outside world that were not supportive and even didn't
Yeah.
have this organized sports background, right? The coaches that today now people have coaches and they're like 6 years old, I'm like, wow,
Correct.
individual coach already. So how talk about your work and particularly the an athlete. How has being an athlete that path to the Olympics, and if you can share back, how does that show up today and how you lead?
Yeah. So one of the things that I was really good at is what's the next thing?
Hmm.
And so sequentially, what is the next thing? So I never looked like, oh my goodness, I could be an Olympian. It was like, okay, I'm the fastest in gym class. So now I want to be the fastest in all the gym class. I would always like, how do I get to the next level? And I, I don't know how I learned this, but I would always study people that are doing it well. So if someone was doing it well, even classwork, if somebody was getting good grades, what are you doing that I'm not doing? If you were doing something, artistic or something that I really wish I could do, I would just study you. So I learned at a very young age how to really take in information and be curious about other people's success. And even if the person was successful in a negative way, like bullies are thriving, but even with a bully, there's people following them. So there's something to be sad for a bully where you've got this entourage like following in them. And you're like, wow, if they were to stand for something really positive, what an incredible change they would make. But they're standing for something negative. So let me figure out why people are following them. And then how can I get people to follow me, but follow me in the ways in which it's doing the right thing for the right reason for the right people. So I don't know where that came from. I just always have been the kid that just really did not tolerate when things were not fair
Mm.
and that people didn't have access. We grew up poor. And so on our block, we had a lot of families that were foster care families. Children's Protective Services was, on our block a lot. There was just a lot of things that you would normally see. I was raised early on in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and so we were just central to an urban setting and all the ills of urban. And then, but you quickly realize that, depending on where you live, that household had it's a different set of love, very different set of comfort and security. And so as I saw that with my friends in the neighborhood, I was just like, how can I make it different for them? And that kind of started my journey of, how do I get to a position where I could make things fair and equitable? That's kind of like the beginning of, and how does it play out, you said? So in the playing out, what I realized is like sport is life. When you're competing in something, it is, literally, you could have like the worst, absolute worst demonstration, like like you're playing baseball and you lose like 10-0. The one thing about sport is like the next game you're playing again. So you can't bring that, oh my goodness, we just had the worst game. You have to shake that off, decompartmentalize that, put it on the shelf, and then you show up again. So the resilience, the tenacity, the fortitude, the goal setting, that's deeply embedded in me, and it's embedded in me at an elite level from as I continue to compete. So I would probably say like the biggest impact on the way that I address things is I use game theory. And that's, the basis in sport, and that's how I address really complex things.
Okay, I want to talk about game theory, Judy, because I'm
Sure.
an MBA nerd like that. But before we do, I want to hear about what was it like? I mean, you're a silver medalist. You're in the
Yes.
Olympics. The whole world, the best are around you. This is
Right.
as stressful as it gets. All eyes are on you.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I want to talk about mind game because I know you're strong,
Yeah.
physically strong, 6 feet tall, but there's a mind game in here. I'm sure that applies to leadership and as well as game theory. Can you tell
Yeah.
me about a moment where here is the strategy that you apply to these incredibly stressful situations to perform?
Yeah.
Could you
Yeah.
talk about that?
Yeah. So what happens, and you'll see it in any competition with athletes, is there is you have to focus on execution. You can't focus on what the end game. So like no one goes at the beginning of their competition and says, oh my goodness, I have to win. This is, I have to win. This is the thing that if we don't win, we will not move to the next level, or these things don't happen. And it's like, you cannot start a competition that way. What you're looking at is you start with like, what are the key factors that will give me a level of success? So every day that you go to practice, what you do is you look at execution. How can I perform with as few mistakes as possible? That will give me the time, the distance, the scoring, whatever I need to do. I have to be as meticulous in what I do, execute it with as few as mistakes. And then the other piece of that is like when you're fatigued and when you're stressed, the one thing you have to rely on is form. So if you're running, if you're shooting basketball, or if you're batting, whatever, the thing that you have to really focus on is your form. And so when I was running in the Olympics, I wasn't sitting there like oh my gosh, I have to win. It's like, oh, I really need to get a medal for the United States. It's like my responsibility. I pretty much got in the blocks, and it's like, here's the key things that I needed to work on. I need to drive out of the blocks, hit that first hurdle, transition on hurdle 4, hold my form on the curve, and then come in strong. You just say it over and over and over. Those are the four things I need to work on. And that is pretty much what you're going through is just kind of, these are the 4 points of execution for me to be successful. So translate that to now as a non-athlete, um, is thinking of, I don't go into a meeting and think I need everybody to agree or I need everybody to support this program or this funding or agree on this policy change and so on. So I go in my four things. It's like number one, who is the audience? What do they need to know? What do I think are some of the issues where there's pushback? Where's their buy-in? How many votes do I have? What would it take to close? Is this one meeting or is this a sequence of meetings to same strategy? Still coming in with that same strategy. And so it's a level of execution. And I know like when there's fatigue in the meeting, like I was saying in running, you default to form, and then in a meeting you will default to policy. So it's like, okay, the policy says that we need to do this, or here's the practice, default to what are, how are decisions made, and make sure that that is always included in how this decision is. Because like I don't think we have consensus. It's like, well, actually it's majority, so we don't have to have full consensus. I mean, know the rules, know the rules. And, I think we need funding. It's like, well, no, this is something that's an unfunded mandate. So really we need is buy-in. I mean, so know what that's the muscle memory of making sure that we can, continue this and get to some level of resolution. So it's the same strategy. I'm just focusing on a different outcome.
I love that, Judi. I hear you say one that there's there are best practices to learn from. And you said that
Yes.
earlier that you're not the first, we're not the first. So who can we
Yeah.
learn from? Two, that when we're in game mode, we are focused on execution, not necessarily we've got to win. I love that because it takes the pressure off, right? It
Yeah.
takes the pressure off. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Third, that there is strategy that we get from those best practices, and we've got a focused strategy to deploy. And then
Yeah.
fourth is get ready for fatigue. It will happen. And don't
Yes.
do your default, but go to, well, what actually matters here? And that's your relationships, your buy-in, all of those pieces. And it's beautiful because both on the field, off the field, you can use the same muscle, right? To
Yes.
support others. And I don't think you and I have gone to different leadership conferences and been around incredible people. And I so love that this is a work and life like advice
Right.
that you can utilize to win that's you can have this whole life and integration. And so I want to go to your point earlier about game theory because
Yes.
it is strategic now. And if
Yes.
you could, for our listeners out there, to explain quickly what game theory is, and it's quite hard, right, to get people
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
collaborate. So explain what it is and then how it works in your real leadership.
Yeah. So when you think about it from a game theory perspective, we always think about games for entertainment, but there's serious games which are strategy. And probably the most successful is the military. They use like military games, and what they're doing is they're creating case scenarios for things that may happen, but they're high risks, So if you think about, anything from military perspective, not being prepared has incredible life and death consequences. And so you think about, what are all the potential ways in which this particular situation can unfold. Some to your advantage, some to your disadvantage, but you're looking at it. So gaming is looking at, and the win is defined by what? The win is that there's agreement. So when you think of win, like some people say, I don't like game theory, it's winners and losers. It's really not. It's once you establish what your intent and goal is, the win is that you achieve it. And so using game theory, there's a lot of things that are a part of serious game strategy that help you think of sequential ways of problem solving, particularly around complexity. And that's like the easiest way I can think about it. But Or an example I use is like, when you're playing checkers, you're pretty much, you move, I move, you move, I move. If you move that, I'll respond to whether you move your checker, forward, side, whatever. And chess, you're really looking at the next 5 to 7 moves. If I move this, the likelihood is going to have you move this, and there's likely these next 7 moves. That's far more complexity in when you're thinking of, how this may play out. That's the kind of game theory that you're looking. And there's a lot of theories, prisoner's dilemma. I mean, there's Nash equilibrium. There's a lot of like really wonkety wonk things. But if you look it up and you just look at, game theory for trying to get a committee's consensus, it will show you how to take these complex game theories and apply it to strategies for getting people to lean in and have a level of buy-in.
Okay, Judy. With
Yeah,
that, and as a setup, I want to talk about buy-in in these challenging times because
yeah,
we do, right? There's a lot of dissonance, and we're maybe, at least in my lifetime, as separate as it feels, and it feels very personal. So I'm curious,
yeah,
thinking about game theory, but also thinking about hope, right? Thinking about
yeah,
resolve, bringing
right.
people together truly in these times. What's coming up for you? How are you thinking about it? I know you're a very hopeful person, and your book
Yeah,
especially is in the heart of, wow, people feel
yeah.
feelings about it.
One of the things that I see that when I think about, and my hope is looking at, what are realistic outcomes. I think most people go when you're looking at coming to some kind of a consensus. You come to that negotiation with an expectation, and it can't be an expectation that you're going to agree with me. So I think most people will come to something and it's like, I think I'm standing on the side of right and you're not. And so then when I come to it, what I'm doing is my whole goal is to recruit you to see the light and come over to how I see the issue. Where I think when you think about it from a game perspective, you look at it as, okay, I know that these things for you are non-negotiable at this moment. And I know for me, these things are non-negotiable at this moment. Why are you talking about it? So let's talk about the things that are negotiable and
Mm,
see if we can get a win out of that. From that, now we're developing a relationship, rapport, a sense of some level of trust because you don't have to agree with somebody to trust them.
mhm,
And in a way in which we may be able to start exploring things that we are diametrically opposite perspectives of it. And so I think it's like, from a game perspective, it's like, what did you think the outcome was going to be?
mhm,
And so I think most people come to a situation where it's all about recruiting the person to their side. And so when I think about these challenging times right now, whether it is from a conservative position versus a liberal position, it's like, I need you to come over to where I'm standing. And it's like, hey, I need you to come over where I'm standing. It's like, the negotiation is like, I have to be willing to give something up as you are. So
mm,
I can't negotiate and say, okay, Annalise, I need you to give some things up. And I'm not willing to give anything up. And if it's a tough thing, if you're giving up tough stuff, I have to give up tough stuff. And I feel that most people during the times with this noisiness is like you're not willing to give up some things that you don't want to give up. So you just kind of stand fast in, I'm not taking another step towards you. And but the win is who are you serving at that moment? Is that your opinion? Are you serving your organization? Are you serving the people who don't have a voice that are disenfranchised? Because you always have to keep that in top of mind when you're standing there making a decision. Because if it's just about you, it's like, well, there's no way that I'm going to, words matter. There's no way that I'm going to concede that. And it's like, well, okay, is that your opinion you won't concede that? Or is that causing harm to the people that you're representing at that point? If it's uncomfortable but not causing harm, then you need to take a step there because there's so many positive benefits of you're not going to get everything, but we are going to get something. And we have an opportunity to come back and navigate for the rest at a different time.
It's such a beautiful way to consider how we might come together. I hear you say that first understand that there's our personal, and then there's also the organizations, the communities that
Right.
we're meant to lead and support, especially those voices we don't hear. And then second, that we need to be realistic. And I'm not about the personal, I've got to convert you to my religion, right? That sounds,
Correct.
whoa, that's not going to happen on this podcast, right? But
Right.
what could happen? What could happen
Right.
is, well, let's try to agree on something. And so what are
Yeah.
those places that are negotiable?
Yes.
And let's actually be willing to get our ego out of the way and do the work for the people that we're both trying to serve.
Right.
And three, get to some like, okay, I'm going to give here, you give here. Let's actually
Yeah.
be willing to dance. And all
Absolutely.
those pieces are so difficult because I feel like Judi, we can't separate the personal with the work to say, you know what, here's the ego is so in there. Like to concede is to be a bad leader, right? And it's we've got to take that away to say negotiation and coming to the table, that is part of it, breaking bread. Like we've got to come together
Right.
first, right? Be willing to say,
Right.
you know what we can't agree on everything, and that's fine, but what could we move toward each other on? I so love that, and I so love that we do have examples of this, right, in our past.
All over.
Yeah.
And truly it is grounded in a level of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And like no, most people don't want to hear that they're undisciplined. It's like if you can't take your ego out of this, you are undisciplined. Now it hurts feelings, but you're
Mm-hmm.
undisciplined
Mm-hmm.
because at this point in time, it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
And your role in that negotiation, in that conversation, is not about you. And so having the discipline to stay in what is my role right now in this interaction? My role is to represent a population or is to represent um, um, uh, um, an organization or is to represent something. I have to stay in that identity because there's a lot of things, if it was just Judi, she may say or do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about Judi. It is about Judi standing in my role and having the discipline to remain in my role to make the best decision and the best interaction for the people that are, or the issues that I'm representing right now. It is discipline. Most people are not disciplined.
Judi, I want to talk about connections. We talked about connections to athleticism, what's happening on the field, but also what's happening in nature. And I know that's something that you
Yeah.
also practice. You're not, oh, I'm only work, right? But actually, you are someone who's really committed to nature. So could you talk about nature? What does that mean in terms of its influence on you in your leadership?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like people will say, okay, what's your work-life balance? Like what, you've got these things that are going on, how do you decompress and so on. It's like, so I play and pray in the dirt. So
Mm.
I love nature. I garden. I do both vegetable gardens and flowers. And one thing that nature, there's so many bio-inspired solutions to things that are extraordinarily complex that nature has figured out. And so one of the things that you learn in nature is like you see this incredible persistence of plants and animals that persist under these incredible conditions. So if you look at, how exactly can, certain plants grow in drought resistant conditions, there's something that they've adapted to. If you can learn about that adaptation and then think about, where ideas are in drought, what exactly has nature figured out that we can use in this context to try to figure out a way to germinate and get some kind of synergy around, an idea or a practice or a policy or a law or just kind of coming together on some things. And, just like everything else, nature has a cycle. It depends on where, okay, if you live in the South, then it doesn't because it's warm all the time. But nature has a cycle. And there's a time of regeneration between spring, summer, winter, fall, spring, summer, winter, fall. There's a cycle. Just like anything else, there's a cycle. And if we can figure and what is happening during each of those cycles, there's a cycle of dormant, there's a cycle of where it flourishes, there's the cycle where it's fruit bearing, and there's a time when it actually drops its seeds for germination. All of those things kind of really inspired you. Take it out of the context of the cycle of life, from a plant life or animal cycle. And then how do we take some of that and take those lessons, those bio-inspired lessons, and use them for leadership?
It's so beautiful, Judy, because often we think, oh, the solutions need to come from us. Oh, they're new. But actually they're old, and there's so many beautiful examples,
Yeah,
not just in people, but also in our plants. And Judy, you and I talked about the example of the sometimes with in the most drought like places, that's actually when these
yeah,
these these plants will then to work together because they're
yeah,
forced to. And so perhaps that's a time now when we look at people not wanting to come together. Actually, it's so hard that perhaps this is a time to say we need new ideas and we also need
right,
each other. So we
right.
can see nature say that to us too. You'd said
There's so
earlier,
many cooperative systems
yeah,
where, there's interactions and like one aspect of the interaction benefits one, the other aspect benefits the other, but the only way they can be both benefited is they come together.
absolutely. With that, you had mentioned earlier, Judy, that it's play and pray, and you do
Yes.
that in the dirt. And I want to talk about the pieces of prayer,
Yeah.
of faith. How has
Yeah.
that shaped you and your leadership, your philosophy?
Yeah. I just feel like, and I don't, for the audience listening, I think, we're all so connected. And the only way that you can really kind of hear from the universe is like you have to be quiet. You have to be still. You have to be able to hear. I feel like the universe gives you lessons constantly, but the only way you receive them is you have to be in a position in which you can receive them and internalize that. So for me, and I've grown up, and it's interesting in this work because of the DEI. It's like, I work with so many different people in so many different religions, and what it has done is like I have such an incredible love and respect for all the religions, and there's such a commonality, even in religions that are at war. It's like, wow. But if I take your doctrines and put them next to each other, they map. You just have a different position, of, who was here first and so on. But I think there's like this incredible, there's an equilibrium in religion that there's something bigger than us. And so it's like the basis of humanity is that, we're all here for a purpose. We all have a responsibility for our neighbors. We need to treat people as we would want people to treat ourselves and our loved ones. I mean, and it doesn't really matter what your religion is. That's just the foundation of all doctrines of just a basis of humanity and kindness to mankind, nature, and the universe. So I am extremely spiritual, and I think as I get older and I study more religions, it's like I think that's my religion. I think that's my religion, and and some religions, are more a little less intolerant if you're not kind of kind of within that doctrine. But I just absolutely believe that people have different relationships within the universe, and it has different ceremonies and different things like that. But it is the universe. And so I just feel that, we're all connected in energy. And when I play in the dirt, that is the dirt of everything that has existed since the beginning of Earth. So how we couldn't be more connected. I have the dirt that dinosaurs walked on, so so it is like we're so interconnected and it's such just this incredible cycle like we see with summer, winter, spring and fall is that's the cycle of life. It's a cycle of periods of time and so on. And so it really is, when you stop and think about it, it really is kind of this beautiful time series of existence.
Judi, thank you for drawing our view to the collective because so often we're caught up in our daily annoyances
Yeah,
that we forget. I forget that we're connected in
yeah,
humanity, and there's this wanting for something more, belief that there's got to be something bigger, and that
right,
most of us, I mean, we have that like built in.
right,
So, however you call the universe, the source, by however your
yeah,
faith is, it's so similar. So, where might we come together, right? Where might we?
right,
Maybe I won't change the name of the person, the being that you call it, but perhaps there's this connection that we care
right,
about ourselves,
right,
our families, each other.
right.
So where might we be able to come together? So I love that. And with that, Judi, are you ready for lightning round questions?
I am ready. I am ready.
Okay, chocolate or vanilla?
I don't eat sweets.
Wow. Okay, cooking or takeout?
Cooking, 100%.
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
Climb a mountain. I'll
Have
be
you
there longer.
Mhm. Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
I'm from Wisconsin. Yes.
How would you rate your karaoke skills? Scale 1 to 10, 10 being Mariah Carey.
My what skills?
Karaoke.
Oh, two. Two.
What's a recent book you read, or what's a favorite book you have? One of your favorites.
Oh, this is going to sound so weird. I read a book by John Perkins called The Economic Hitman, and it's helping me understand a lot of geopolitical, right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
What's your favorite way to practice self care?
I think my way of self-care is like I will create opportunities for me to be in the quiet.
Hmm. What's your definition of a boss mama?
A boss mama. You know, I think a boss mama is, I mean, that is an individual that absolutely bidirectionally can do self-care, but care for others. And so we'll put on that face mask first and make sure everybody on the plane has their face mask.
It's beautiful. What advice, Judi, would you give your younger self?
I think if I were to speak to my younger self, I probably would tell my younger self it's exactly what you think it is. Just keep listening.
Hmm. Can you say more about that? Because I just have to draw.
I think, I think I've just, even from like my youngest self, I always felt like there's certain things that I would do because I just kind of felt like I was told like you need to do this. There's something else you should do. Don't be afraid. It's going to be all right. Try this. You're too comfortable. You need to. So I've always kind of had a lot of guidance. And so, probably in my younger life, it didn't feel comfortable. But as I got older, then I just realized, no, that's just what your path sounds like.
Hmm. And then where can we find you? Like LinkedIn, anywhere else?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, you can find me. It's Judy Clarke, Judi Clarke, Clarke. I have Instagram, and listen, I do not go on it that often, so I can send some things, but I'll just be honest. If you ping me, it'll come to my phone. But probably the easiest is like, you can reach me at Stony Brook University. You can reach me at LinkedIn under Judith Clarke. Um, and I just, what I love is I love people that just are standing in the noisiest place, just with a sense of equilibrium and are hearing the signal and all that noise. Love that.
So beautiful. Okay, last question, Judi.
Yeah.
Final ask, recommendation, or parting thoughts to share?
I think, you know what? I think I think the final thoughts would be, as I said, the cycle of let nature inspire you. So, the same way that we look in late winter, when the leaves, when pretty much nature has gone to sleep and the animals have hibernated and so on, it feels like it gives you a certain feel of not inspiration. But then spring comes and the flowers come and the migratory animals come back and they start hibernating and so on. And we have to think about that now, that, what may feel like a dormant time, or it may feel like a time of celebration, is that we were going to keep cycling this. But, through each cycle, we have to figure out and be bio-inspired. It's like, how do we do this better? How do we do this with a level of cooperation? So we're just not seeing these things so polarizing. We see it galvanizing.
Mhm.
We'll get there.
Judi, thank you so much for your story, your
Yeah.
inspiration. I love so much the connections with nature, with faith, with these Olympic, wow, accomplishments. So grateful to you. Thank you.
And thank you for having this time for me in this conversation. I've truly enjoyed it.